I just want to welcome everybody to the final session of Careers Week 2022. It's been an absolutely amazing week. We've had 20 panels over 5 days. It's just been absolutely epic. And there's no other words. And there is no one better that I would like to finish off an absolutely epic career with than our speaker today, Dalia Feldheim. But before I introduce her, I'm going to do something that I usually do at the end, but I want to do it at the beginning because people tend to drop off at the end. But I want to say a huge thank you to every single one of the organizers that's helped me put Careers Week together today. They deserve to be heard at the beginning and not at the end of this session. So I want to say a massive thank you to every single one of the speakers that have come along. I want to say a huge thank you to people in the Department of Political Science, particularly Ben, AJ, Katie, Naomi, and Ali, who have just, without you, who saved me so many times in the last few weeks pulling this together. So thank you so much to my amazing group of student helpers who have worked tirelessly. We've had conversations at hours that Dalia will tell us is not very good for work-life balance, but we have been doing it. William, Chloe, Shay, Candice, Manassa, Tamara, you have been absolutely stars beyond belief. Thank you so much. And to also the people in Department of Economics and Jen Hudson, our Dean of Arts and Historical Sciences, who's a big supporter, and as well as Lucy Shackleton in the Institute, the European Institute, and our alumni office. Everybody, none of this happened without a huge army. So thank you so much. And sorry about that, Dalia. I just wanted them to be all heard and acknowledged. So I'm not going to take up any more time, and I'd like to introduce Dalia Feldheim, who actually I was a fan of yours long before the book, and anyone who's an alum here that took my IR course a number of years ago, and when I taught my session on feminism, I always used the Run Like a Girl ad as part of that, and it was always amazing. So there you go, it got massive reach. I was moved by it when I first saw it, and I used to use it a lot when I was teaching about how women are stereotyped. So Dalia Feldheim, the founder of Flow Leadership Consultancy, has a huge corporate leadership experience and passion for championing others to allow organizations to promote happy and authentic and psychologically safe working cultures. Again, apologies to my team that were for the last week. But and before that, she spent 2 decades as a C-suite global marketing executive at Procter & Gamble, where the big campaigns of Tampax Mother Nature and Always Like a Girl was ranked as one of the most influential campaigns ever, I think. And with a master's degree in consulting and coaching from INSEAD, those specializing in organizational psychology, along with a happiness facilitator diploma. And I could go on and on and on. But most of all, there's an advocate for leadership, for female leadership. And that doesn't mean just for women, also the lessons of female leadership that men could take, I'm sure to see. But that a few women or anybody in the world, but Sheryl Sandberg would write, "This woman gives me hope." So, Dalia, I'm not going to take up any more time. Thank you so much for joining us, and please give us some hope.
Thank you so much, Melanie, and I'm super excited to be here. I hope we have men in the audience. Raise your hand. I know you're in groups, but so I can see only part of you, but feel free. This is completely, actually, it's for the guys as much as it is for the girls. So lovely to be here. You don't recognize my accent, but I actually have British roots. My mom's Irish, my dad's from Greenwich, and I always joke and say that I'm made in England, born in Israel, because my mom moved over pregnant, and that's where my mix of accents comes from. So lovely to be here, and I will start by sharing my screen. So you tell me that you can see it. Yeah? Okay. Dare to lead like a girl. So I'll start by asking you what it means to you when I say run like a girl. So that was the question we asked back in 2014, as Melanie mentioned, in our Always Like a Girl campaign. Now, that campaign immediately became the most viral ad of the year. I think we had 250 million views until today. It was the first feminine care ad to be featured on the Super Bowl, right? So a very feminine ad in a very masculine kind of game. It won, I think, 14 Cannes Advertising Awards. And yeah, Forbes just chose it 6 months ago as one of the 10 most influential campaigns of the decade. So for those who didn't see it, let's start by just seeing the beginning of the commercial.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh, God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So yes, when did doing something like a girl become an insult? Now, as one of the global marketing directors responsible for this campaign, I'm of course extremely proud of those business results. But what I'm even more proud of as a mom of three is that a few months ago, so this is 6 years after the campaign first aired, my youngest daughter, Anna, who's now 12, called me from school all excited. Mom, you won't believe it, but they're showing your ad in social studies. More than a commercial, it had become an icon for women's empowerment. Now, as you see in the commercial, when you ask a young girl what it means to run like a girl, she says, what do you mean? It means run as fast as you can. But somehow something changes during puberty. And suddenly it becomes an insult. So our goal with this commercial was to change the meaning of words and reclaim the phrase like a girl to mean simply be proud to be who you are. Now, I'd like to ask you what it means to you when I say lead like a girl. So I spent the last 2 decades as a C-suite leader, most recently as the only woman in a group of men. And I believe it's time to reclaim that phrase once again, and this time in the world of leadership. So a little bit about me, as I mentioned, I was the first Israeli in my family. So my family always used to say that I have healthy chutzpah. Chutzpah is a Yiddish word that means, being brave and cheeky. So when the policeman came to give us a ticket, I was the one sent to talk him out of it. I was a competitive gymnast, which became my crash course in stamina. And then I was a platoon commander. So for me, doing things like a girl was never much of an insult. I studied psychology and business and started working at Procter & Gamble, a dream, a marketeer's job. And I'm going to tell you a story that actually led me to what I'm doing today. It's a story of two cities, okay? So 6 months into my job in P&G, I was called up to my general manager's office because one of my launches hit a wall. Now I was sitting in his office. I remember in Geneva, there's a door, anyone has been there. And I'm sitting in his office and we're going over, what didn't succeed. And I was just so frustrated because, the reason it didn't succeed, my samples got stuck in the custom. And I was so frustrated because, sometimes it's not in your control. And when I get frustrated, I start to tear. A tear appears in my eye and I am so embarrassed. Right here I am sitting in my general manager. So he's not my manager, he's my manager's manager, and I am crying in his office. Frantically, I try to regain my composure. And then my boss, Jim, who's a friend and mentor until today, he looks at me, he smiles, he gives me a box of tissues. And when I finally regain my composure, he looks me dead in the eye and he says something I will forever remember. He said, Dalia, don't you ever be embarrassed for crying in the office again. It's a sign of your passion, and passion is your superpower. And then he added, and if you ever work for someone that doesn't see that, walk away. They don't deserve you. Wow. I was so empowered. And for the next 17 years in P&G, I was lucky to have many managers like Jim that believed in me, sometimes more than I believed in myself. And my career just went from strength to strength. But it wasn't until I reached the lowest point of my career that I really understood what Jim was talking about. So fast forward 17 years, we moved from Geneva to Moscow to Geneva to Singapore. And when we moved to Singapore, my husband opened a startup. And a few years later, P&G said, okay, Dalia, we need you back in Geneva. And I said, I want to put my money where my mouth is on dual career. I can't go back. My husband just opened the company. So P&G and I, we decided to part as friends. And I took up a role as CMO for another company, Fortune 500 companies. I thought I found my dream job. 100 employees all across Asia. I was brought in to completely to turn the company into more of a consumer-centric company. Dream job, right? I love the CEO, I love the CMO, I love the global vision. 2 months into the role, I got a new boss, the local CMO for Asia. And it took me exactly 1 week to realize that him and I were, how can I put it politely, like fire and water. So I was all about passion and creativity and people, and he was all about numbers and scorecard and ROI, right? ROI, return on investment. Most days the culture felt like ROI or you die. In one of our first meeting, he comes to me and he says, Dalia, I'm not going to tell you what you're good at. I find it a total waste of time. I'm only going to focus on what you need to fix. Okay. And then he added, hey, and there's no art in marketing. It's only science. You just didn't get it yet. If anyone's it was like a dag and a turn, right? Anyway, one morning, I was summoned into his office, right? Like you're summoned into the headmaster, if you remember it a few years back. Well, I'm in his office and he starts giving me feedback. Now, I love feedback, right? In P&G, we used to call it tough love feedback. Have you heard the term before? Tough love is direct feedback, honest feedback, but one that comes from a position of care. That's how it should be. But that day, there was no love in that room. It was just really tough, denigrating, belittling feedback. And I'm now a C-suite woman, right? The only C-suite woman in his team, and I'm holding it in. And the frustration is mounting. And then he starts humiliating my team. And that's when I became a lioness, because I knew how hard they worked. And I became so angry and so frustrated that a tear appeared in my eyes. He looked at me and he smiled and he offered me a box of tissues. And for a moment, I had that warm, fuzzy feeling, remembering my first boss, Jim. But then I lifted my eyes and I noticed something weird in his smile, almost evil, as he turned around the tissue box, and I couldn't believe my eyes. On the other side of that tissue box was a handmade sticker he prepared in advance, which read, Dalia's tissue box. You see Melanie's face? That's how I reacted. Are you kidding me? I said with a little self-esteem I had left. He leaned back in the chair and he said, oh, Dalia, stop being so emotional. It's just boy banter. I know you have a sense of humor. Suddenly, all my strengths were not only not appreciated, but they were totally denigrated. My passion for people, I was too motherly. My positivity, I got the nickname Miss Kumbaya. Slowly, I started losing my spark. But I wasn't raised to give up, right? I shared with you before my crash course in stamina, and I decided to persevere. So first year, the natural reaction, fight, right? When someone attacks you is fight. So I fought the way I knew to fight. So I was giving feedback. I was volunteering for change program. And at the end of that year, I realized that I was just banging my head against the wall. You can't change someone that doesn't want to change. So second year, fight or flight. So I said, okay, I'm a coach. Let me shut up and listen. And that year I tried to change myself, to do everything he thought I needed to do. So creativity is not important, process, Six Sigma. That year I hired a data scientist to work and, give him all the data that he needed. That year our scorecard was good, but I felt physically sick. I literally felt like I left my heart and my art at the doorway. In the beginning of year 3, I actually attended a P&G alumni, so my previous company. And I remember walking into the hall in Cincinnati and, there was an ex-boss of mine speaking about servant leadership. And I literally remember planking myself down in the chair and saying, this is how culture should look like. It's not me that's crazy. I became like a frog in boiling water. Then and there I said, okay, I need to leave this toxic environment, but not before I delivered everything that I committed to the global CEO and the global CMO that I will deliver. My boss wanted silence, and I was determined to bring my heart and my art to the workplace. With my team, we created a campaign that was extremely data-driven, but was also very creative. And when that campaign won an Effie Award, which is given for business results and creativity, I knew I found my mojo back and it was time to move on. I can tell you those 3 years of bullying, basically office bullying, were extremely challenging. But I guess that's the reason I'm here today. I learned to stop relying on external validation. And just like in the commercial, I learned to lead like myself, with passion and authenticity. So let's see the end of that commercial.
Keep doing it because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. Doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that's not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm going to do it anyway. That's what they should do.
Like a girl also mean win the race.
Why can't like a girl also mean win the race? So I decided to pivot and turn my pain into purpose. And, I'm sharing that with you because I have news flash for you. Everybody hurts sometime, right? We will all experience pain sometime in our life. And key is something called post-traumatic growth. I mean, when I left the job, I had post-traumatic stress disorder. I interviewed for other CMO roles and I just didn't feel it was right. And I decided to take 2 years to study. So I did my master's and I went back to school. I did my master's in organizational psychology in INSEAD, and I started studying with Professor Tal Ben-Shahar, who's Harvard's guru for positive psychology. And that led me to start teaching. And I became an adjunct professor for the science of happiness in Singapore Management University. And that really led me to what I'm doing today, which is I'm working with key companies, Microsoft, the Netflix, the Googles of the world on leadership developments. And I'll tell you, it actually was, I'll tell you guys, I was teaching in Singapore, my whole course on happiness studies. And one of my workshops is around find your purpose. And I'll never forget it. This 23-year-old Singaporean raises his hand and he said, Prof, I love when they call me Prof, right? They're very hierarchical in Singapore. He says, I need to say thank you. I now know what my purpose is. But I know I need to be a corporate slave for a few years and then I'll do what I love. And my hair, in the back of my head stood up. And, that little kid made me realize that's my new purpose, because I know it doesn't have to be that way. My 17 years in P&G, I was in a state of flow. I was completely aligned with my purpose. I loved every moment of my corporate career. So that's what I do. I work with companies on helping them find purpose and joy in the corporate world, as well as in startups, of course. I gave a TED Talk back in December 2019, and I'm super excited to share with you that my book Dare to Lead Like a Girl, with a foreword by Sheryl Sandberg. How did I get to Sheryl Sandberg, you ask? I just asked. I just wrote to her directly. I shared my TED Talk and I basically said that I'm writing a book, and she volunteered to write the foreword. So super, super exciting. It's coming. I'm in New York now because we're launching the book here in June. And thanks to Melanie, the first 100 to sign up for this course is all going to get the book. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I think, sharing it with university students is amazing. I really want to hear your feedback. So that's what I'm doing today. And this is my purpose, to work with individuals and companies to bring purpose and joy to the workplace. Now, during my studies, I realized that actually what happened to me is sadly way, way too prevalent in the workplace today. And I don't want to depress you, okay, because I know you're just about to enter your career, but 87% of employees are unhappy in the workplace today, believing they work for companies that don't appreciate them as human beings. 20% of them are so angry and frustrated that they make other people angry and frustrated. Those are the toxic employees. Now, when I share these numbers sometimes with CEOs and I talk about happiness at the workplace, they say, oh, Dalia, that's so fluffy. And then I show them this data, $7 trillion a year. That is the cost of stress-related, lack of engagement, all the situation that we're seeing now. Now, the good news, and why I do what I do, is that we can reverse it. We can teach ourselves to be happier and more resilient in the workplace. And I know it's possible because I experienced firsthand what it means to work with companies that believe in you as a human being, and what happens when you work with companies that not, or the company was great, but a boss that doesn't. And that's what I focus on today. Now, I can tell you that, for me, this is a major crisis. The pandemic is nothing compared to the mental health crisis that we're experiencing today. And in the midst of this mental health crisis, what I argue is that, our previous models of leadership, the hunter, warrior, industrial efficiency models are just not effective anymore. They're not relevant for the modern world of leadership. In the midst of such a crisis, it's actually those, historically considered feminine traits that are more relevant than ever before. In fact, Harvard Business Review did an amazing research. In 2012, they wanted to understand, why don't we have more women in senior roles? Are women not as effective as men as leaders? And in 2012, they found, yes, women were as effective as men. They repeated that research again in 2019. And what they found is not only were women as effective as men, actually, women scored better in 17 out of 19 leadership traits. These include things like resilience, empathy, teamwork, intuition, but also things that are less kind of intuitively feminine, like results, change, innovation. So why does lead like a girl still sound like an insult? Now, it's not about men versus women. Reality is there's no such thing as a feminine brain or a masculine brain. We all have within us both feminine leadership traits as well as masculine leadership traits. We have positive feminine, which are, the gatherers, the intuition, the teamwork, the empathy. We have positive masculine, which is the direction and logic and, systems. A good leader needs to rotate between the two. The issue is that the business world today has sunk into something that my friend Masi Sota, who's one of my book recommendations, he talks about the wounded masculine, where power over people overtakes power with people. In such a world, that's where my provocation comes, and I want to encourage all leaders, men as well as women, to tie into their more feminine leadership traits, rebalancing it, and dare to lead more like a girl. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through, usually each one of these is a whole day workshop, but I'm going to just touch upon, the key elements of what it means to lead like a girl. And I call this model the 5P. Okay, I come from marketing, 5P, easy to remember. The first is all around purpose. How aligned are we to our passions, to our strengths? The second is perspective and mental perseverance. The third is something that I call power up, or physical power. It's how we take care of our energy. The fourth, and maybe the most important one, is all around. Anyone want to guess? Feel free to either come off mute or put in the chat. Two more, starting with P. Does anyone know what the number one secret of happiness is? The number one driver of happiness? Anyone want to guess? Starts with P. People. The quality of our life is the quality of our relationship. So how do we lead with people? Power with people versus power over people. And the last P is all around positivity, or something that I call emotional bravery. So let me give you a few tips and just a little bit on each one of them, because I'm a very practical person. I want you to come out with a few tools out of today. So let's start with the first one, with purpose. So what is purpose? How do I find my purpose? Feel free to, draw these 3 circles. And the first circle is your strengths. What are you good at? Now, the key question here in 1998, they asked 3,000 leaders, what is more important, focusing on our strengths or focusing on our weaknesses? What do you think? Well, the answer then was 60% of leaders said it's more important to focus on our weaknesses. But interestingly, those 40% who said it's more important to focus on our strengths, they were 2 times more likely to be successful at what they're doing. Why? Our strengths strengthen us. It takes so much more effort to move, from negative to neutral than from good to great. I like to think, sometimes I use the analogy of a sailing boat, right? Our strengths is the sail that makes us go forward. Our weaknesses are the holes in the. No, I need to close those holes. But will closing that holes make me move forward? Also no. Okay, so, invest in your strengths. That's where you spend most of your energy, and find ways to neutralize your weaknesses. Now this, book, Now Discover Your Strengths and Now Change All the Rule, came out in 98 and became a Bible for women, for people development. In 2007, okay, they did another research to say, okay, what % of employees know what their strengths? Do you know what your strengths are? If I ask you what's your top 5 strengths, do you know what they are? So when they asked this question, only 30% of employees knew what their strengths were. And even worse, I'll ask you, do you use your strengths every day? When you start working in the world, ask yourself, am I using my strengths every day? The answer was only 17% of employees were using their strengths every day. How sad is that? So if you only remember one thing from today, because this is each one of the strategies that I'm going to share have been proven to help with acute work-related anxiety, each one of them, okay, in research. There are 2 that are slightly more effective than others, and the first one is the strength. So if you only remember one thing from today, find your strengths and ask yourself, am I bringing my strengths to work every single day? So that's the first dimension of purpose. The second dimension is, what are your passion areas? Because sometimes you're passionate and it doesn't mean it's the same thing. So what are you passionate about in the world? What makes you tick? What would you do for free? And then the third dimension is, how can you bring your strengths and your passion areas to contribute to the world? That is purpose, the intersection of those 3 dimensions. Okay? So I'm going to give you an example on myself, but that's your homework. I want you to draw these 3 circles and think for yourself, what are my strengths? What am I good at? You can do a strength finder. There's something called VIA Strength Finder. If you do VIA Strength Finder in Google, it's a free strength finder. If you don't know your strengths, that tool will help you. What are you passionate about? And then how you can bring it to work every single day. So for me, I knew my strengths is people and creativity. I was passionate about people empowerment in general, but women empowerment in particular. So when I started working, I really resonated with working on the femme care brands. And how can I contribute to the world? Well, I'll tell you a story. In 2011, I just moved to Singapore. And I started working, my biggest market was India. So I flew to India for the first time to do in-home visits. Anyone working on marketing knows that in-home visits is all about speaking to the consumers in their natural environment to see how we can create product that better help their life. That morning, we walked into the house of Isha. She's a 12-year-old girl outside of Bangalore. And we were sitting in her house and we came to speak with her and her mom. And Isha was sitting on the floor. Her mom walked in with drinks and nice china, and she handed us. And then she turned and she gave cup and plate to her daughter on the floor in a metal plate, like you give an animal. I remember looking at Isha, and she was sitting against a blue wall like this. And, I noticed that where she was sitting, the color was faded, as if she sits there quite often. She didn't stand up for the rest of the interview. Towards the end of the interview, aunts and uncles walked in. And when her uncle greeted her on the floor, for a moment, I noticed this sad, embarrassed look on her face. When we left, I told my agency, I said, what was that all about? And she said, well, Dalia, she's on her period. And I said, so what? She said, well, in India, we have all these myths about period. We believe that girls and women on their period are impure. They're dirty. So they're not allowed to go into the kitchen. They're not allowed to go into prayer areas. And in fact, they're not allowed to live with the family. And they kind of sit and often sleep on the floor during those days. And, they don't use pads or tampons, of course. They use cloth and they get infections. So they don't go to school one week a month. And then she went on. And then she said, hey, we even believe that a girl on a period cannot touch pickles because she will make them go rotten. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just kept having Isha's sad, embarrassed look in her face. And I thought to myself, it's so hard to be a teenager already and to feel left behind just because I'm a girl. And then for everyone that comes into the house to know I'm on my period, how embarrassing is that? So the next morning I called my agency. I said, I couldn't sleep. She said, you know what? I couldn't either. I read about it and I realized that, the origin may have been great. We wanted to give women a rest during that week, but, today the reality is that women feel left behind. So here I was, right? My strengths in people and insights and just noticing that little, glimpse in her eye, my passion for people empowerment and women empowerment, and it was very clear for me what my contribution needs to be. I'm like, I don't care. I'm head of always the biggest brand in India. It's called Whisper in India. How can I use the voice of my brand to do something good? And I said to her, listen, I'm a foreigner, so I'm going to leave it with you, but we need to do something about it. Let's find a way to talk about it in an acceptable manner. 12 months later, we launched this campaign. I touched the pickle. We decided to use humor to tackle the issue. So we had this granddaughter tell her grandma, hey, I dared, I touched the pickle, I wore white, I went to school, I played sports. Now I'm extremely proud of the Always Like a Girl that came after and many things in my career. But if there's something I'm proud of my career is this campaign. It went completely viral. There was a TED Talk about it. There was, even a Bollywood actress that almost beat up a reporter. And it really started the discussion on women empowerment in a country that was craving women empowerment way before Me Too. Now I'm giving you that as an example, right? I could brush over because I was a marketing director here to sell always. But I realized I'm not in the business of selling pads. I'm in the business of women empowerment. So when you start working, ask yourself, what are you in the business of? How can you contribute to what the world needs? Bring in your strengths and your passion to work every day. Okay, so that's the number one. Bring your passion and purpose to the workplace. And as you know, I mentioned earlier, our strengths strengthen us while our weaknesses weaken us. So do you bring your strengths to work every single day? As Nietzsche says, he who has a why can endure anyhow. In the book Man's Search for Meaning, right, the author talks about how his purpose helped him survive the Holocaust. So he was stripped from all his work when he entered the concentration camps. And he was just so, he decided there and then that he is going to come out of these camps and he is going to recreate his work. And he was just recreating it in his head. And his passion to teach again and to see his wife again kept him going through the atrocities of the Holocaust. It's proven that people that have a purpose, they are not only healthier and happier, but they're also so much more resilient. And that leads me to the second P, which is all around the mental resilience. And that starts with perspective. Because I said earlier, everybody hurts sometime. And Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology, right? He talks about, he wanted to understand, are happier people experiencing less pain? Have they experienced less pain in their life? And what he found is no, they experience exactly the same level of pain as unhappy people. The difference is something he calls the 3P of pain, the 3P of amplifying pain. They are you taking it personally? Do you see the source of pain as permanent? And do you see it as pervasive? You failed in math. Will you always fail in math? You failed in math, that means you're a failure in everything else. Happier people know that it's not personal. This too shall pass. It's not permanent and it's not pervasive. So perspective is able to step back from the source of pain, to recognize that pain is there, but suffering is a choice, what we decide to do with our pain. And I like to talk sometimes on how to deal with adversary, because you will have adversary in your life. And from my experience in the workplace, I like to call it, how do we learn to dance with adversary? So imagine, when I had this abuser, okay, first year, it was kind of fight, because that's the natural reaction. Second year was all about flight. I tried to avoiding. But what if instead of fight or flight, I stood next to my aggressor? With empathy, I tried to understand where he's trying to go to, and then use the power of the punch to lead him into a beautiful dance. And that's what happened in the third year. He was determined to win awards and to do a digital transformation. So I used that power of the punch to get resources and create a campaign that was a win-win. So how do you learn to dance with adversary? But I want to say one thing, a very important thing. One of my mistakes is that I thought that I can coach myself out of a toxic environment. The answer is there's only one strategy that works in a toxic environment. So learn to dance with adversary when it's general conflict. But when you come to toxic environment, there's only one strategy that works, and that is zero tolerance. Zero. Sorry, sir, you won't talk to me like that. I'll come back when you're ready to treat me with respect. Walk out of the room. And people in Asia say, oh, but it's impolite. Yeah, but it's, that's disrespectful. But were you treated with respect? Walk out of the room. I see you're triggered. I'm triggered. Let's continue this conversation tomorrow. Zero tolerance, fast and immediate. And leading like a girl sometime is going into that masculine, the positive masculine with, assertiveness. Because I was all about empathy and I could change my boss and, trying to kind of help him and coach myself out of it. No, I like to use what Muhammad Ali says, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Sometimes we need to move into our positive masculine. Okay, so learn your boundaries. That is leading like a girl. I'll jump over the third P, which is all around the positive power. Okay, that's about maintaining your energy because there's so much written about it, and I'm sure you know, okay, the importance of breathing, eating, sleep, movement. And I'll go into what I shared with you already is the number one driver of happiness. So Harvard did a 75-year-long longitudinal research to understand what is the secret of happiness. And they found that the number one driver is the quality of our relationship. Gallup replicated this research in the workplace. And the number one driver was a question. It's called the Q12 research by Gallup. And the question number 12 was, do you have a best friend at work? CEOs were like, what is this stupid question? What are we, a football club? But that was proven to be the number one driver of happiness in the workplace. And the number two was, do you have good friends at work? So ask yourself, are you investing in your relationship? Look around the room, the people that you're with. Tell me who your 5 top friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. Are you investing in the quality of your relationship? Because you know, one relationship, okay, can bring down the whole house of cards. And sometimes it's a relationship with a family member, which is the hardest. Okay, but know to identify who in your life is lifting you up and how can you spend more time with that upper circle. So people, the quality of your life is the quality of your relationship. And I love to say, forget about ROI, right? You're learning finance. There's no ROI without people. No ROI without people. That's why I want to use new words. ROI is not return on investment, but return on interaction. So you guys in the finance world, okay, be a new type of finance that recognize that the real ROI is the return of interaction with our employees, with our stakeholders, with our clients. That's what drives your business. And I love, when people say, oh, but in the workplace, I need to be strong. I can't be compassionate. What about my executive presence? And I love to use Jacinda Ardern, who's for me an amazing role model, right? The Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I'll just read her quote. So one of the criticisms I faced over the years is that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough, or maybe somehow because I'm empathetic, it means I'm weak. I totally rebel against that. I refuse to believe that you cannot be both compassionate and strong. And look how she dealt with COVID, right? 5 out of the 7 markets dealing best with COVID were led by women. Why? They dealt with it completely different. It wasn't Trump that, hey, I know it all. This is nothing. They took it seriously, okay? They listened to advice and they dealt with empathy. We're all in it together. They talked to the children. So how can you be both compassionate and strong? That is leading like a girl. And I'll finish off with the last one, which is positivity. And I'll say, same Martin Seligman that I spoke about, the 3P, the father of positive psychology, when he was asked what he regrets in life, he says, well, I regret calling it positive psychology because people think that it's all about being happy all the time. But no, positive psychology is not about being happy all the time. It's about giving ourselves, being emotionally brave, giving all our emotions room. Who doesn't have negative emotions? Only dead people or psychopaths. So if you're sad, that's great news. You're not dead or a psychopath. Give yourself and the people around you the permission to be human. That is what leading with positivity is all about. And you've been quite silent, okay? So I am going to give you a mental question, okay? And I want you to write in the chat. So I'm going to show you a slide and I want you to count the geometrical shape on the slide. Okay, how many geometrical shapes can you see? Ready, sit up, get ready. There's prizes for the correct answer and your 30 seconds start now. Okay. Anyone want to share how many shapes? Let me go into the chat. Okay, or maybe Melanie, you can help me read them. Okay, 26, 45. I can see the highest is 45. Does anyone beat Melanie? Did anyone see more than 45 shapes? Going once? 40. Thanks, Gabriela. Anyone saw more than 45? Going once, going twice. Sold to the woman in black. Okay. The answer is, are you ready? The answer is that I have no clue. There's more than 60 shapes because that is not the objective of the exercise. I'm going to ask you two more questions. In the slide, there was a clock. Did anyone notice the time on the clock? I like Melanie's face. What clock are you talking about? Anyone?
I'm thinking.
Okay, what was the time on the clock? Did anyone notice the clock?
Yeah.
You did. Okay, let's see. What was the time on the clock? 9, 8. Didn't even see the clock. Oops.
The clock was
You're not
underneath
alone.
something.
Most people don't see the clock. So I'm going to ask you another question. Okay, you have a second chance. In the picture on the slide, there was a picture of a bus. How many visible kids were on that bus? Okay, 4. Sometimes I hear, oh, the bus was yellow, because usually a school bus, at least in the US, is yellow. Okay, so what is the answer? It was a little close to 10 past 10, and there's 5 visible kids on the bus. But what does this little exercise come to show us? Our brain focuses on what we tell our brain to focus on. So when I asked you to look at geometrical shapes, all you could see is geometrical shapes. And that's how you operate within life. When you look, if I look at all the negative things in my husband, believe me, I will find. Okay, same about people around you. When my boss was looking for what I'm not good at, yes, he will find. When we look at what's not good in our life, we will see what's not good in our life. But the good news is that it also works the other way around. When we look for the good in our life, we will see more of the good in our life. And that's the essence of gratitude. And I like how my professor Tal Ben Shachar talks about the double meaning of the word appreciate. When we appreciate the good in our life, the good in our life appreciates, increases in value, because we see more of it. And I'll give you another. Remember, I said there's 2 strategies that are slightly more effective. The first one was strengths. The second one is gratitude. So if you want to remember 2 things out of today, the first one would be to focus on your strength. The second would be to spend 5 minutes a day in a state of gratitude. And the most effective tip that I heard is take a little post-it note, write the word gratitude, stick it onto your mirror. And every morning when you're brushing your teeth, just think about what you are grateful for in the last 24 hours. Research has shown that spending as little as 5 minutes a day in a state of gratitude significantly improves our well-being, health, etc. And it helps us see more of the good in our life. That is leading with positivity, focusing on what we can focus on, what we can control versus what we cannot control. Focus on what we have versus what we don't have. Focusing on the future, because we all had some shit in the past. Sorry, excuse my French. So how can we appreciate more in the life? And that's the 5P of leading like a girl. And I decided to call the book Dare to Lead Like a Girl. And dare is all around courage. Now, courage, my friend Paul Polman told me this, and it's really fascinating. It's probably the most misunderstood word. People perceive it to be making decisions that others don't make, or going ahead of the group. But courage comes from the French word cœur. Anyone here know what cœur means? Across the pond? Heart. Thank you. Courage comes from the word heart, because real courageous leaders lead from the heart. That's the core of leading like a girl. Now, the other important thing about courage is that courage is not the absence of fear. We all have fear. Courage is facing your fear, digging into your superpowers, and then dare to lead like a girl. So this is leading with purpose, perspective, power up, people, and positivity. That's what leading like a girl is all about. Now, what can you do? Okay, so I told you each one of these is a whole 2-3 hour module that I run in companies. I'm going to just end off with just a few tips on what you can do. So the first one is purpose. Okay, purpose is really spending some time understanding your strengths as a leader, helping your team focus on your strengths. Connect your work to a bigger purpose, right? Find what I call the golden link. Simon Sinek talks about the golden circle. Start with the why. I talk about the golden link, connecting your own personal purpose to the company purpose. That's when magic happens. The second is all around perspective and mental wellness, which is really helping you. Remember, don't flight, but dance with adversity, helping you and others find the win-win, have a growth mindset. We learn to fail, or we fail to learn. How can you learn from your failures or from your pain? The third, and I jumped over them, but I'll give you one little tip, okay? And when I taught it at the university, one of my students came up with the acronym Better Me. 5 physical tips for improving, our energy and leading from our heart. It's about being aware of our breath. Remember the grandma used to tell us, take deep breath or go count to 10? The easiest thing. And the Dalai Lama, when he did research in the West, he was surprised how we're always in this crazy buzz. They did research among monks, okay, meditating, and they found that through neuroplasticity, a whole area in their brain, their frontal left cortex, associated with calm, completely evolved. And that was for as little as 5 minutes a day. Spend 5 minutes. Do you not have 5 minutes a day to breathe? Taking deep breath immediately, activates the parasympathetic system and calms down. The E in Better Me is about eating. We have more neurons in our stomach than our brain. The T is touch. We lost touch with touch. Hug each other. If that's not appropriate, just give a high five. The R is all around rest and recovery. And you guys are students. My students in Singapore used to sleep 4 hours a day. I told them, dudes, you're doing it all wrong. 8 hours of sleep have been proven to be so much more effective, not only as the beauty sleep, but to deal with memory, okay, because we continue to process as we sleep, and to deal with emotions, right? Think about when you're stressed about something, it seems so grim and great or at night, but then when you wake up, it's like, oh, it's not such a big deal. So sleep, recovery. Recovery is also about a digital detox. Close your bloody phones, okay? Close your phones. Boston Group Consulting forced their employees to close all digital, to digitally detox for 1 afternoon a week. Productivity went up 74%. Go outdoors in nature, spend time with friends, close the phone. This is recovery. And the last one is movement. And we all know about physical, the movement important for our well-being. It's not only to look good, okay, it's to feel good, but it's also the mental. Actually, it's been proven that 3 times a week doing HIIT, high intensity interval training for 30 minutes has been proven to reduce dementia by 52%. I don't know about you, but I'm scared of dementia like crazy. I don't want to lose my mind. So physical exercise is also good, for your mind, for your emotions, etc. Okay, so Better Me, breathing, eating, touch, recovery, and movement. That's your physical. Leading like a girl is being aware. It's not about stress. There's no issue with stress. Stress is actually good for us. Stress increases stress hormones that, like dopamine, and, they actually drive maximum awareness. Think about you doing an exam. If it's the right level of stress, you're actually more focused. The issue is lack of recovery. You go from one exam to the other exam without resting. It's like going to the gym. Stress in the gym is good for you. But imagine you worked out constantly. Your muscle needs the time to rest. Okay, so stress is not bad for us. It's actually good for us if we know to recover. That's all around our power up. The fourth is about people. Okay, people is all about getting to know the people around you as human beings. Do you know the brother and the sisters, the life stories of the people sitting next to you now? Look around. Did you spend time knowing them as people, as human beings? Helping people connect. In my early days in P&G, we were like a family. We used to go rollerblading in the parking lot in summer and water skiing on Lake Geneva in the opposites in the winter, and then water skiing in summer. So do you get to know the people as people? And then lastly, it's all around positivity, a positive perspective. Okay, give yourself the permission to be human. Practice empathy. Empathy is a learned skill. Do you know that research was done and they found that the level of empathy among kids your age, so university graduates, is actually 40% lower than it was 30 years ago? That's scary. I'll repeat it. Empathy levels are 40% lower than 30 years ago. Why? Because you break out with your girlfriend over a text message, because you hide behind digital tools. And it's not a way of criticism, but get out there. Practice your empathy genes. Get to know people. Empathy is about seeing the world from the other person's perspective. What does their life look like? You want to be a good leader. How can you innovate when you don't have empathy, when you don't understand unmet consumers' needs? Okay? And then finally, create the opportunities to share gratitude. Bring your emotions. Don't suppress, express. And I'll finish off with a paraphrase on a quote that I once heard from Sheryl Sandberg that I rewrote slightly. I want every little girl and boy and every employee, man or female, who are told they're too emotional, to be told instead that emotions are a sign of passion and not a weakness. And it is that passion that is their superpower. So dare to lead like a girl. And if any of this resonated with you, you can find a shorter version in my TED Talk, so feel free to share it. And Melanie was so kind to buy the books, actually, to the first 100 of you to register. And if you want to buy it for someone else, we're in a movement here. I can tell you, I did my TED Talk in 2019. I got thousands of calls from women that decided to do something, from men. But the most exciting call I got is from a guy in Australia who told me, Dalia, I saw your TED Talk. I wanted to say thank you. I realized that I'm a reformed asshole. What can I do? Okay. So if we can do something for you guys, my kids are 21 and 19. I don't want them to feel like corporate slaves. So I'm on a mission to work with leaders, with conscious leaders, to bring back purpose and joy to the workplace, because we can. So thank you for so much. And all profit from the book goes to Lead Like a Girl schools. We have one in India and in Africa. So we will continue the giving. So thank you so much. And now I believe we can open for questions.
Thank you so much. I mean, that was just absolutely astounding. And yes, there are the books actually don't hit the shelves in England till 24th of August, but I have them already on order. They will land in Fantasy. So anybody who wants one, or anyone who wants one, of the people who are like on the list first will get them. But anyone who comes to ask, there will be books. So come and find me, and if we need to get more, we'll get more.
Find me on LinkedIn and tell me what you thought, okay? Super.
Exactly. And I have to express my gratitude because, and we've been doing a lot of work about how do we reach out to people over the last few days, and we've had all sorts of workshops on LinkedIn. And just so that you all know out there, I did my bit of daring by, I'd been watching Dalia's work for a while, and I was like, you know what, I'd love her to come and speak to you. So I sent her a message on LinkedIn and said, you know what, please, I love your work. Will you come talk to us? So for, you know, when we talked about this week, does it work to do that? Absolutely. And so thank you so much for responding. Do we have any questions out there? Does anyone have a question they want to put in the chat, they want to share, either in the Q&A box, in the chat box? Chloe, do you have any questions with you?
Oh yeah. So thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. So from the room, I guess the main question that we had was, going into like the working life as a recent graduate, how would you suggest men or women, like if like quick fire sort of, what's a quick thing that we could maybe, as like very young people going into the working world, because it may be a bit harder to stand up to your boss or things like this going in straight from the beginning. What sort of mindset do you think maybe going in as a young person into the working world could we take forward?
Okay, so first of all, I mean, go in fully yourself, you know, with the objective to give. I worked my ass off for many, many years. So of course, you know, work hard is where it starts, right? But when it comes to, you know, really assessing where you want to work, and I can't, you know, stress it enough, you know, the quality of our life is the quality of our relationships. So, you know, understand the boss, understand the environment, understand the culture. And if the culture seems shitty, don't work there no matter the pay, because you won't be happy, right? So find a way to bring to life, you know, to find an organization where you can bring your full self to life with all your passions and strengths. And, you know, when you do what you love, you won't work another day in your life. So that would be my advice. And if you do fall into an environment that is toxic, you know, for you or for anyone else, stand up, you know, zero tolerance. There's enough companies that will want you out there. So try to stand up to it, try to say directly. You know, I did hear of a young leader, actually a great tip that I heard recently is a young leader was about to start working with a boss that had a bad reputation. And she basically decided to tackle it heads on. And she, you know, in the first meeting, she said to him, listen, I heard this and this and this about you. I don't believe it to be true. And I'm committed to work with you to change your equity in the organization. And she made him a partner, and they turned around his equity and their relationship, which I thought was really cool. So, you know, that would be my advice. Work from the heart. Make sure you bring your heart to the workplace every single day. And if you do see any kind of toxic environment, treat it with zero tolerance. Don't be scared. There's enough company. They don't deserve you.
There you go. You're always worth more. Is there anyone else that has any questions? Chloe, anything with you?
There's no other main questions from the people in the room. I feel like everything was explained really well and everyone's looking forward to reading the book. But just on a personal note, like, yeah, thank you for speaking to us, but it's very inspiring. And how did you, it's just more like, how did you say no, like that person? I guess you explained it in the answer you gave, but
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. That's my biggest mistake. I tried to coach myself out of that situation. I tried to use empathy. The tools that worked for me in the past were not working in this environment. And, you know, I until today do not know why I didn't put in an official ethics line complaint. That would have, I of course complained to the local HR. They went in, they took the tissue box out, they told him off, but nothing was really done. You can't change someone that doesn't want to change unless you use leverage. That's my advice for you. So find a way to use leverage. Leverage was going to the boss on the boss. And I decided to do a TED talk about the guy. Okay, he left 2 months after I left. I was shaking like crazy. I'm still like, what will happen if he sees it? But it's not about him or me, really. I'm, you know, if I see him in the street and he lives in New York, I'm going to say thank you, right? Because he helped so many other people, you know, deal with it. And, you know, if my TED helped one, and until now I have at least 30 people that came and told me they stood up for bullying because of my TED Talk. For me, that makes all the difference. So, out of my mistakes also comes the book. I didn't deliver an ethic lines complaint. I tried to solve it myself. I thought like I could coach myself out of it. And the answer is no. And that's why it's zero tolerance, which I didn't do as well as I should have.
Thank you. Go on, Chloe, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's so inspiring to see your journey and everything. And just thank you for coming to speak to us today.
Super. I love speaking to, students at the age of my kids. Do feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Do feel free to share the TED. Help me with this revolution for you when you get into the workplace that, having a toxic work environment. You all heard of the Great Resignation, right? The number one driver of the Great Resignation is toxic environment. So, it is the time, more important than ever before, to lead from your heart. So dare to lead from your heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been an extraordinary pleasure and honor. Thank you for coming to speak to us. I hope one day we'll get you on campus and we can hear you in person. I'm sure it's even more magnificent than if it could get such a way. So if you're ever in London or you're ever coming through, please reach out to us. We would love to have you and to host you in person. It has been just the perfect icing on the cake to an amazing careers week that was made amazing by all of you guys that joined us day session in. I mean, some of you have been like real diehards. You've been in like nearly every single day for different sessions. So thank you for everybody. Thank you, Dalia. Careers Week 2022. That's a wrap. See you next year. It's going to be even bigger and even better.
I hope I didn't scare you. The best is yet to come. Go kick ass. Thank you.
Amen to that. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.